What if the truth you've been searching for your entire life was sealed in an old envelope and hidden for 17 years? What if one letter, written in silence, soaked in regret, and never meant to be found, held the key to everything you never understood about your past? This isn't just a story. It's a revelation, buried deep inside a wooden chest, in a dusty attic no one had touched in years, was a letter no one was supposed to read. It was never delivered, never opened, never spoken about. A letter that carried the weight of an entire family's secret. And for almost 2 decades, it remained untouched, as if time itself was trying to forget it existed. But time doesn't erase truth. It only delays the pain. The paper was stained, not just by age, but by emotion. You could feel it, the way it was folded, the words smudged, the ink faded, the kind of handwriting that shakes when someone is saying something they've been holding in for too long. A hidden letter, a forbidden confession, a final attempt to speak without being seen. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's not a love story. It's not a goodbye letter. It's the moment a broken silence decides to scream. It's the kind of story that forces you to look at your own life and ask, what if someone hid the truth from me too? This letter was never meant to see the light, but now that it has, nothing can ever be the same. And maybe, just maybe, what was written inside it, the pain, the guilt, the unspoken apology, isn't just for the person it was addressed to. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's for all of us who have ever carried questions that were never answered, or lived years inside a story we didn't fully understand. You see, some truths don't knock, they break in, and when they do, they don't ask if you're ready. That's what this video is. A door opening that was never supposed to open. A story that was never supposed to be told. But it's too late now. Because once you start hearing what's inside this letter, you can't unhear it. And if you've ever felt that something didn't add up, if you've ever felt like there was more behind the silence, you're exactly where you need to be. This isn't just another emotional story. It's a piece of someone's life, untouched, unresolved, and about to be revealed. So listen closely. The past is about to speak. If this story already pulled at something deep inside you, leave a comment right now that says, I need to know the truth, and subscribe, because these letters, they just keep finding their way to us. It was supposed to be just another afternoon, quiet, uneventful. I was helping my mother clean out the attic of my grandparents' house, a place filled with old furniture, dusty books, and the smell of time that had passed too fast for anyone to notice. There was something sacred about that room, something untouched, forgotten, and maybe that's why it was there, in the back corner under a loose floorboard, that I found the box. It wasn't marked, no name, no label, just an old wooden box sealed shut by rusted hinges and time. I opened it, expecting to find more of the same, yellowed photos, maybe war medals, or old letters from people I'd never met. But what I found stopped everything. A single envelope, worn, faded, fragile at the edges. And right there on the front, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since I was a child, was my name. I couldn't breathe. 17 years. That's how long this letter had been waiting, hiding, locked away. And it wasn't from a distant relative or a forgotten friend. It was from my father, the man who walked out of our lives without a goodbye, the man I stopped believing had ever loved me at all, the same man whose silence had echoed through every birthday, every graduation, every moment I wished I could have shared with him. And now, in my hands, was his voice. This wasn't just an unsent letter. It was everything I never got to hear. It was the missing piece of a story that had haunted me since childhood, and holding it felt like touching something sacred, something painful, a memory I didn't know I still needed to heal. This wasn't just paper. It was the weight of abandonment, of loss, of a father's absence that carved emptiness into the boy I used to be. I stared at that envelope, my hands shaking, afraid to open it, afraid of what I might find inside, and even more afraid of what I wouldn't. I wondered why he never sent it, why he wrote it and chose silence instead. Was it guilt, shame, love that came too late? In that moment, the attic didn't feel like just a room anymore. It felt like a grave for the things no one talks about, a tomb of emotional stories buried in layers of dust and fear. And this letter, this forgotten confession, was the ghost I never expected to meet. There's something cruel about the timing of truth, about how it arrives long after it could have made a difference, How it sits in silence while you learn to live with questions it could have answered. This wasn't just my father's letter. It was his unfinished apology, his attempt at closure, his last chance to explain the pain he left behind. And even though he was gone, that letter was still speaking, still asking to be heard. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. My fingers hesitated, not just because of the fear of what was inside, but because opening it meant unlocking a version of the past I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But part of me knew, deep down, this moment was always meant to come. With a deep breath and a trembling hand, I unfolded the letter. The paper crackled like it had been waiting for this too. The first line hit harder than I expected. If you're reading this, it means I never got the chance to explain. His words weren't formal. They weren't polished. They were raw, full of pauses, crossed-out sentences, ink smudges, evidence of a man who was wrestling with his guilt. He wrote like someone trying to hold back tears. You could feel the weight in every line. My eyes scanned the page, but my heart heard every word. He spoke of choices, of mistakes, of a moment when he stood at a crossroads between doing what was right for himself and what was right for us. He admitted he failed, not just as a husband, not just as a man, but as a father. He said the silence wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he didn't know how to care the way I needed. He said he was scared that his presence might hurt me more than his absence, scared that if I ever truly knew what happened, it would break me. And then came the part I wasn't prepared for. He spoke of a family secret, something he discovered just before he left, something that had haunted him ever since. He didn't go into full detail, but he said it was the kind of truth that could damage a child's heart if delivered too soon. That he wrote this letter hoping I would find it only when I was strong enough to carry it. That moment broke something in me. Because all those years I thought he had abandoned me. All those birthdays I cried alone, thinking I wasn't worth staying for. He was out there, carrying this weight, watching from a distance, loving me from a place I couldn't see. And it made me question everything I thought I knew about pain, about regret, about what it means to say goodbye without saying a word. His final lines were etched deep, not just into the paper, but into my soul. I kept this letter because I believed one day you'd be ready. I'm sorry for not being there, but I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. And there it was. The thing I needed but never expected. His apology. Not perfect, not clean, but real. A father's unspoken confession. The emotional story behind his disappearance. The piece of the puzzle that was missing for 17 years. It wasn't just a letter. It was an act of redemption. And in that moment I realized, sometimes people don't come back, but their words do. And those words can still change everything. If you're still watching this and you carry a silence of your own, a truth that was never told, a goodbye that was never said, write in the comments, I'm still waiting for answers. Because maybe this isn't just my story. Maybe it's yours too. I don't even remember dropping to the floor. One moment I was holding the letter, and the next, I was curled up on the attic floor, sobbing in a way I hadn't since I was a child. It wasn't the kind of cry that comes from sadness alone. It was something deeper. A grief I didn't even know was still alive inside me. A release of all the years I had spent building walls around a wound I had never allowed myself to truly feel. That letter, it didn't just bring back memories. It shattered the version of the story I had told myself for nearly 2 decades. For 17 years, I carried anger like armor. I told myself he didn't care, that his silence was proof of his absence, that someone who really loved you doesn't just disappear without a word. But now I had his words, and they changed everything. Because the truth is, love doesn't always look like presence. Sometimes it looks like distance, like sacrifice, like silence that protects rather than abandons. I had hated him, deeply, quietly, and sometimes, when the nights were too long and my heart too heavy, loudly. I blamed him for every broken part of me, for the way I shut people out, for the way I feared being loved only to be left again. I had buried him in my memory as a villain, but his letter, it resurrected the man behind the myth, a man who was scared, a man who made mistakes, but above all, a man who loved. And that was the part that hurt the most, realizing I had spent years directing pain towards someone who was still holding space for me in his heart, that he had never stopped caring, that I had misunderstood his absence as rejection, when it was, in some twisted way, an act of love he didn't know how else to give. That letter became a mirror, And when I looked into it, I didn't just see him. I saw myself, the patterns I had repeated, the relationships I had sabotaged, the trust I never gave because I was afraid it would be ripped away again. I had become the product of an unfinished story, until now. You know that moment where everything inside you breaks, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you from the inside out? That's what happened. Not all at once, but piece by piece, word by word, line by trembling line. The emotional impact wasn't just about reconciling with a father I thought I had lost. It was about finally seeing the truth behind my own pain. It was the beginning of emotional healing, the kind that doesn't come from time alone, but from clarity, from closure, from the courage to face the emotional story that had been buried for far too long. And in that process, something else began to shift, not just in my memory of him, but in how I viewed myself. I started to wonder how many of us are walking around carrying wounds from words never spoken, from goodbyes never explained, from truths that were hidden for what someone thought was our own protection. How many of us are still hurting, not from what happened, but from what we never understood. This wasn't just a letter from a father to a son. It was a silent key unlocking a door I didn't know I had locked, and now that it was open, I couldn't turn away. Because once you know the truth, even when it breaks you, you're never the same. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. I still have the letter. I keep it in the top drawer of my nightstand, not to reread every day, but to remind myself that love, even when silent, still has a voice. It doesn't sit there as a symbol of abandonment anymore. It sits there as proof that some stories, no matter how long they remain buried, still find a way to be told. And when they do, they change everything. The boy who once felt forgotten now understands he was always remembered, just in a language he hadn't yet learned how to hear. That letter didn't just close a chapter. It opened something far more powerful. It offered a kind of emotional healing I didn't know I needed. It allowed me to release a weight I had carried in silence. It became less about my father, and more about the part of me that had been waiting for this truth to find its way home. And maybe that's why you're still here. Watching, listening. Maybe, just like me, you've been waiting for something too. You see, the beauty of stories like this isn't just in the tears they bring or the memories they awaken. It's in what they unlock inside us. Because everyone carries a version of this letter, maybe not written on paper, maybe never even spoken aloud, but felt deeply. A letter from someone who left, or someone you lost. A letter you never received, or maybe one you never had the courage to write. Sometimes it's not about the words we read, but the words we realize we've been waiting for. And maybe, just maybe, this story was never meant to be just mine. Maybe it was always meant to find you, right now, in this moment. Because forgiveness doesn't always come in conversations. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper, between the lines of a story that sounds too much like your own. Maybe the truth you've needed isn't something new. Maybe it's something you already know, but haven't allowed yourself to feel yet. And if you're wondering why this letter, this video, this story found its way to you today, maybe the answer is simple. Because you're ready. Ready to open your own letter. Ready to look at someone you blamed and ask, what was your silence trying to protect me from? Or maybe to look inward and admit, I've been carrying pain I didn't deserve, but I'm not going to let it define me anymore. So ask yourself, who do you need to forgive? What truth have you kept buried under years of noise and distraction? What letter is still waiting inside you, unwritten? Because here's what I've learned. Stories like these are more than just emotional content. They're mirrors. They show us the wounds we've ignored, the love we've misunderstood, and the parts of ourselves we've left unread for far too long. They remind us that healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from finally understanding. And if this story has moved something inside you, if it cracked open a silence you didn't know was still there, then don't let it stop here. Tell me in the comments, this could have been my story. Or even simpler, I forgive you. Or if you're still searching, I'm still waiting for my letter. Say what you feel. Say what's true for you. Because in this space, in this community, your pain has a place to breathe. And your voice, it matters. And just when you think this story is finished, I want you to remember, tomorrow, you'll hear the letter of a woman who found out her mother's deepest secret on the day she buried her. And trust me, you're not ready for what she discovered. If this story touched something in you that no one else can see, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and send it to someone who might still be carrying their own unsent letter. And when you're ready, in the comments write, "I've been carrying 17 years of silence too." Because here, no one has to carry pain alone. These letters keep finding us for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, this one was meant for you.